Please, make it stop growing. I can't hide it anymore." The town doctor confesses to the cowboy. The sun rose slowly over the small town of Willow Creek, painting the dusty streets with shades of gold and orange. The air was still, except for the faint sound of a horse's hooves on the dirt road. Jack the cowboy guided his horse Rusty toward the center of town. Jack had been coming to Willow Creek for years, but the town always felt like home to him. He knew every person, every building, and even the small cracks in the wooden boardwalks that lined the street. Life was simple here. Days started with the sun, and nights ended with the stars, and Jack liked it that way. Jack was not a man of many words. He preferred action to talk. He could mend fences, ride horses, and help a neighbor in need without saying much. People respected him for that. But he also had a kind heart, and his eyes missed little. He noticed when something was wrong, even when no one admitted it. And lately, something about the town seemed off. The town itself was small, almost too small to hide secrets. There were only a handful of stores: the general store that sold everything from nails to sugar, the blacksmith's workshop with its constant ringing of hammer on metal, the bakery with the smell of fresh bread drifting down the streets, and the clinic at the far end of town. The clinic was a simple wooden building with peeling white paint and a small garden out front. Dr. Ellis had been the town doctor for as long as anyone could remember. He was a quiet man, always polite, always careful with his words. People trusted him because he cared for everyone and never judged them. But lately, Dr. Ellis had been different. Jack first noticed it during a quick stop at the clinic a few mornings ago. He had gone in for a minor scrape from a fence, expecting the usual calm and gentle examination. But Dr. Bob Ellis had seemed distracted, his hands trembling slightly as he cleaned the wound. He avoided eye contact and mumbled explanations as though he were afraid someone was listening. Jack had frowned, thinking maybe the doctor was just tired. After all, running a clinic in a small town could be exhausting. Still, the feeling of unease didn't leave him. Over the next few days, Jack began noticing more signs. The doctor would appear in town at unusual times, walking slowly, holding his coat tightly closed. Sometimes, Jack thought he saw shadows of worry behind the doctor's eyes. The townspeople hadn't said anything, but whispers began to spread quietly from house to house. People glanced nervously when Dr. Ellis passed by, lowering their voices as if afraid of being overheard. Jack's curiosity was strong, but he was also careful. He didn't want to pry, and he knew better than to spread gossip. He decided to watch and wait, keeping an eye on the doctor while still minding his own business. Jack had seen enough in his life to know that some problems could not be solved by rushing in. Patience was often the key. One morning, as Jack rode into town, he saw Dr. Ellis walking toward the clinic, hunched over slightly, his steps heavy and slow. The doctor's usual neat appearance seemed strained, and the white coat he always wore looked wrinkled and unkempt. Jack slowed Rusty and watched, noticing how the doctor paused, almost as if he were listening for something. His eyes darted around nervously before he finally stepped into the clinic. Jack felt a pang of concern. Something was clearly wrong, and the doctor was trying very hard to hide it. The next day, Jack decided to take a small detour through the streets near the clinic. He saw the doctor tending the small garden in front of the building, pulling weeds with care. But his movements were different from usual, hesitant, almost awkward. The doctor paused, looked at the ground, and seemed lost in thought. Jack dismounted and walked closer, keeping a respectful distance. "Morning, Doc," he called softly. "Doctor." Ellis looked up, startled, and quickly straightened his posture. "Morning, Jack," he replied, forcing a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Jack noticed immediately there was a tension in the doctor's face that wasn't there before, a heaviness that couldn't be explained by tiredness alone. Jack scratched his chin and said, "You don't seem like yourself these days."
"Everything okay?"
Dr. Ellis hesitated, then shook his head slightly. "I'm fine, Jack. Just busy, that's all." His voice was low, almost too quiet to hear, and his hands fidgeted with the edge of his coat. Jack didn't push further, knowing the doctor would share when he was ready. Instead, he gave a small nod and said, "All right, Doc. Just don't forget to take care of yourself, too." As Jack continued into town, he couldn't shake the feeling that something serious was happening. He thought back to his childhood, when he had learned to read people. There were signs that couldn't be ignored: hesitation, nervous movements, avoidance, and an unusual focus on small, meaningless details. Dr. Ellis displayed all of them. Something was eating at the doctor, and it wasn't just fatigue. Over the following weeks, Jack observed quietly, he saw the doctor make frequent trips to the back of the clinic, closing the door carefully behind him. There were nights when the doctor left town for short periods, returning before sunrise. Whispers grew among the townsfolk, though most of them were too polite, or too fearful, to confront him. Jack, however, had no intention of joining the gossip. He simply wanted to understand, to be ready if the doctor ever needed help. Life in Willow Creek continued, as usual for the other townspeople. Children ran freely in the dusty streets, laughter echoing off the wooden walls. Farmers brought their produce to the small market, and cowboys like Jack rode in and out of town tending to cattle and horses. But under the bright skies, a quiet tension grew around the clinic. The doctor's secret, whatever it was, cast a shadow on the town. People felt it, even if they couldn't name it. One evening, Jack stopped by the general store for supplies. The shopkeeper, old Mr. Thompson, leaned over the counter and whispered, "You noticed anything strange about the doctor lately?" Jack shook his head. "I've seen him acting differently, yes, but I don't want to assume anything." Mr. Thompson sighed, glancing around the empty store. "People are talking. They're worried, I guess, but no one knows what's really going on." Doc Ellis.
"He's been hiding something. You can see it in his eyes."
Jack nodded slowly, thinking about the doctor's nervous movements, the way he avoided certain streets, the hurried steps he took when no one was around. "Maybe he just needs someone to talk to," Jack said. "Someone he can trust." Mr. Thompson frowned, shaking his head. "It's not that simple. Some things, they don't come out easy. And some people, they don't know how to ask for help." Jack left the store, the sun setting behind the hills, casting long shadows over the streets. Rusty walked steadily, and Jack's mind wandered. He had faced many challenges on the ranch and on the trails. But this was different. This was about a man he respected, a man who cared for the entire town, struggling in silence. Jack realized that sometimes bravery didn't mean riding into danger. It meant waiting, watching, and being ready to help when the time came. That night, Jack sat on the porch of his small cabin on the outskirts of town. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of hay and dust. Stars twinkled above, and the quiet of the night made his thoughts sharper. Dr. Ellis's struggle weighed on him, and though he didn't know the details, he felt certain of one thing: the doctor could no longer carry this burden alone. As Jack drifted to sleep, he resolved to be there for the doctor when the moment came. He didn't know when or how, but he would be ready. Whatever secret the doctor held, Jack would face it with him, quietly and steadfastly, the way a true friend should. The sun would rise again, and life in Willow Creek would go on. But Jack understood that some changes were coming, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The quiet cowboy, steady and watchful, felt the first stirrings of a responsibility that went beyond fences and horses, a responsibility of trust, of loyalty, and perhaps even of courage, in a form he had never known before. And in that peaceful golden dawn, he waited. The next morning, the town of Willow Creek woke to the familiar sounds of roosters crowing and the distant clatter of horseshoes on dirt. The sun had not yet fully risen, but the golden light already touched the rooftops of the small town, giving everything a warm glow. Jack mounted Rusty and rode toward the clinic. He had made a quiet decision the day before. He would pay closer attention to Dr. Ellis, not out of suspicion, but out of concern. Whatever was troubling the doctor, it was clear that he could no longer manage it alone. As Jack approached the clinic, he noticed that the door was slightly ajar. The garden, usually neat and well kept, seemed untouched, weeds curling toward the morning light. There was no sound of movement inside. Jack dismounted, tied Rusty to the fence post, and walked cautiously toward the door. A quiet creak echoed as he pushed it open. The interior smelled faintly of disinfectant and herbs, the usual comforting scent of the clinic. Yet something was different. The air felt heavier, and Jack could almost sense the tension that had been growing in the town. Ellis sat at the small wooden desk near the window, hunched over a stack of papers. His hands shook slightly as he wrote notes, and his eyes, usually calm and focused, darted nervously toward the window. When he noticed Jack, he straightened quickly, hiding the papers beneath the desk. "Morning, Jack," he said, his voice low and uneven. "You're early today." Jack nodded, keeping his tone gentle. "Morning, Doc. Thought I'd check in, see how things are going." Dr. Ellis forced a small smile, but did not respond. Jack sensed that the doctor's mind was elsewhere, weighed down by something much heavier than the day's work. He didn't want to push him, not yet. Some burdens could not be lifted by words alone. Over the next few days, Jack observed Dr. Ellis more closely. The doctor's secret, whatever it was, seemed to grow heavier each day. He noticed subtle changes. The doctor's coat seemed tighter across his shoulders, as if he were trying to hide something. His hands, normally steady, trembled when he adjusted medical instruments or wrote notes, and occasionally Jack caught glimpses of Dr. Nauman. Ellis in moments of private panic, pausing mid-step, staring at the floor or rubbing his temples as if trying to stop an invisible pain. One afternoon, Jack was passing the clinic when he heard a soft, strangled sound from inside. It was unlike anything he had ever heard from the usually composed doctor. Concerned, Jack approached the door and knocked lightly. "Dr. Ellis? You okay in there?" he called. The noise stopped abruptly, replaced by the quiet scratching of a pen. The doctor's voice came softly, almost too quiet to hear. "Yes, just some notes." Jack frowned, but did not press further. He could tell that Dr. Ellis was struggling, though the details remained hidden. The cowboy decided that words alone would not reach the doctor. Sometimes presence and patience were stronger than questions or advice. That evening, Jack rode past the clinic again and noticed a small light glowing in the back room. The doctor was there, moving about restlessly. Jack slowed Rusty, unsure whether to approach, but before he could decide, he heard a sharp exhale from Dr. Ellis. It was a sound of frustration, of fear, and of helplessness, all mixed into one. Jack's heart tightened. Whatever the doctor was hiding, it was causing him real pain, pain that went beyond the physical. The next morning, Jack found himself at the edge of town, near the old willow tree where he often rested. Rusty grazed quietly while Jack's mind replayed the moments he had seen over the past week. He could no longer ignore the truth. The doctor's burden was growing, and it was affecting not just his health, but his spirit. Jack felt a strong sense of responsibility. He didn't know how to help yet, but he knew he had to be ready when the time came. Meanwhile, inside the clinic, Dr. Ellis struggled alone. The mysterious growth had begun weeks earlier, subtle at first, but now it had become impossible to hide. He tried to carry on with his work, treating patients, administering medicine, and offering advice. But every action required more effort than before. His mind constantly worried about the consequences if anyone discovered his condition. Would the townspeople still trust him? Would they see him as capable, or would fear replace respect? One afternoon, Mrs. Hargrave, an elderly woman who had lived in Willow Creek her entire life, entered the clinic with a complaint about a persistent cough. Ellis welcomed her warmly, but Jack, who had followed at a respectful distance, noticed the doctor's unease. Every movement seemed measured, deliberate, as if he were carefully hiding a secret under his coat. His hands shook slightly as he checked Mrs. Hargrave's pulse, and he quickly looked away when she thanked him. After Mrs. Hargrave left, Jack stepped inside. "Doc, are you sure you're all right?" he asked gently. Ellis hesitated, staring at the floor. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure whether he could trust himself to speak. Finally, he whispered, I don't know, Jack. Something is happening to me and I can't stop it. I can't hide it anymore, but I don't know how to explain it." Jack's expression softened. He placed a steady hand on the doctor's shoulder. "Whatever it is, Doc, you don't have to face it alone." The doctor's eyes met Jack's, filled with a mixture of relief and fear. It was the first time he had admitted, even to himself, that he could not carry the burden alone. The cowboy's calm presence gave him hope, a reminder that someone trusted him without judgment. Over the next few days, Jack stayed closer to the clinic, offering quiet support. He helped with chores, ran small errands, and stayed nearby in case the doctor needed someone to talk to. The town, unaware of the full extent of Dr. Ellis's struggle, continued its normal routines. Children played in the streets, neighbors chatted over fences, and the sun rose and set as if nothing had changed. But inside the clinic, a quiet storm brewed. The doctor's fear of discovery and the growth of his condition weighed heavily on him, and Jack's presence was a small but important anchor. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Jack found Dr. Ellis sitting alone in the back room of the clinic. The doctor's face was pale, and his coat hung loosely from his shoulders. Jack approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. "Evening, Doc," Jack said softly. "Mind if I sit?" Dr. Ellis nodded, too tired to speak. Jack pulled up a chair and sat beside him in silence. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of a clock and the soft rustle of papers. After a long pause, Dr. Ruskov, Ellis finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jack, I've tried to hide it, but it's growing faster than I can handle. I can't control it, and I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that everything is fine." Jack nodded slowly. "You don't have to pretend anymore, Doc. I'm here. We'll face it together." For the first time in weeks, Dr. Ellis allowed himself a small, genuine smile. He still feared the reaction of the townspeople, still worried about the future, but the knowledge that someone understood, someone cared, gave him a sense of relief he had not felt in a long time. As the days passed, Jack continued to watch over the doctor, providing support in quiet ways, carrying supplies, checking on patients, and simply being present. The town went on as usual, but inside the clinic a bond grew between the cowboy and the doctor, a bond forged by trust, understanding, and the unspoken promise that no one would face their struggles alone. And in that bond, Dr. Ellis found the courage to face what he had hidden for so long. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, that challenges would come, but for the first time, he did not feel completely alone. Jack's steady presence reminded him that even in the hardest times, support, patience, and friendship could be stronger than fear. By the end of the week, Jack had become more than an observer. He had become a quiet guardian, watching over the doctor, ready to step in whenever needed. The mysterious growth was no less frightening, but the burden of hiding it had lessened, and for Dr. Ellis, that made all the difference. The days in Willow Creek passed slowly, each one beginning with the sun rising over the hills and ending with a sky filled with stars. Life for most of the town went on as usual, but inside the clinic, Dr. Ellis's struggle had begun to demand more attention than ever. The mysterious growth he had been hiding for weeks was now impossible to ignore. It affected not only his work, but his confidence, his energy, and even his interactions with the people he had served faithfully for so long. Jack noticed the change immediately. He had been riding into town early each morning, stopping by the clinic, checking quietly on Dr. Ellis without disturbing him. But over the past few days, the doctor had started to move differently. His steps were slower, almost cautious, as if he were carefully measuring each movement to avoid revealing the secret that weighed heavily on him. His coat, which he always buttoned tightly, seemed strained in ways that made Jack uneasy. One morning, as Jack rode toward the clinic, he noticed Dr. Ellis standing outside, looking over the small garden. His posture was stiff, and his hands were trembling more noticeably than before. Jack dismounted quietly, approaching slowly so as not to startle him. "Morning, Doc," Jack said softly. Dr. Ellis turned, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and relief. "Jack, I didn't hear you come up," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "You're not hiding anything from me, Doc," Jack replied calmly. "I can see when something's wrong," Dr. Ellis looked down at the ground as if searching for words he couldn't find. I thought I could manage it. I thought I could keep it hidden, but it's growing, and I can't pretend anymore." His voice was barely audible, and Jack could hear the strain in each word. Jack nodded slowly, understanding the weight of the confession.
Then don't hide it, Doc. You don't have to.
"Whatever this is, we'll face it together." The doctor looked up, eyes glistening. For a moment, it seemed as if he might collapse from the tension he had been holding inside. But he didn't. He took a deep breath and nodded, as though the simple words from Jack had given him the strength to continue. Over the next few days, it became clear that Dr. Ellis could no longer maintain the appearance of normalcy. Patients who came to the clinic noticed his fatigue, the slight hesitation in his movements, and the way he avoided certain tasks that had once been easy. Rumors began to swirl quietly among the townspeople, though most kept their concerns to themselves. Jack continued to offer his quiet support. He would help carry supplies, tend to small chores, and simply remain near the clinic. He never pried, never asked questions that Dr. Ellis was not ready to answer, but his presence alone seemed to give the doctor a sense of safety, a reminder that someone cared enough to stay, even without knowing all the details. One afternoon, the tension reached a breaking point. Dr. Ellis had been examining a patient when he suddenly froze, gripping the table for support. Jack, who had been sitting nearby, noticed immediately and stepped closer. "Doc, are you all right?" he asked, his voice steady but concerned. Doctor. Ellis shook his head slightly, trying to regain composure. I don't know how long I can keep doing this, Jack," he admitted. "It's not just the physical part. It's the fear, the worry, the thought that people will see me differently if they know. Jack placed a reassuring hand on the doctor's shoulder. People might be surprised at first, Doc, but anyone who matters will understand. You've helped this town for years. One secret won't erase that. The doctor exhaled slowly, trying to calm himself. I thought I could handle it alone, he whispered. I thought I could keep going, keep helping people without anyone noticing, but it's too much.
I need help, Jack. Jack nodded.
And you have it. Right here, right now.
You don't have to face this alone.
That evening, Jack stayed late at the clinic.
The sun had set, and the town was quiet except for the occasional creak of a wooden door or the distant lowing of cattle. Dr. Ellis moved slowly, carefully organizing medical tools, checking notes, and trying to maintain some sense of order. But Jack could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the strain in his hands. He decided it was time to speak more directly. Doc, Jack said gently, I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know it's serious. And I know it's scary, but hiding it only makes it worse.
You need to tell someone, at least one person you trust, what's going on. And I'm here for you.
Dr. Ellis paused, looking at Jack with a mix of fear and gratitude. He wanted to speak, to explain, to confess everything, but the words caught in his throat. For weeks, he had carried this secret alone, afraid of judgment, afraid of losing the trust of the people he had dedicated his life to serving. Now, standing there with Jack, he realized that maybe it was time to let someone in, someone he could trust to understand without fear. Finally, he nodded slowly. Jack, I think you should know everything. I can't hide it anymore. It's growing in ways I can't control. I've tried to manage it, tried to keep it from everyone, but I can't do it alone. Jack listened quietly, his expression calm. He didn't interrupt, didn't react with shock or alarm. He simply nodded, giving Dr. Ellis the space to speak without judgment. For the first time in weeks, the doctor began to speak freely, describing the strange growth, the worry it caused him, and the fear of what might happen if anyone found out. Jack stayed with him, offering silent support, never questioning, never doubting. He simply allowed the doctor to unburden himself, to release the tension he had been carrying for so long. As the hours passed, Dr. Ellis's voice grew steadier. Damn? The fear did not disappear, but it became manageable with Jack's quiet presence. By the time the town fell into deep night, a bond had formed between them, stronger than mere friendship, built on trust, understanding, and shared concern. In the following days, Jack continued to stay close, offering practical help where he could. He ran errands, helped organize supplies, and ensured that Dr. Ellis had time to rest. The town continued its usual rhythm, unaware of the growing tension inside the clinic. But for the doctor, life had changed. He no longer felt entirely alone, no longer had to hide the truth in silence. And yet, the challenge was far from over. The growth continued, unpredictable and persistent, reminding Dr. Ellis that this was not a problem that would disappear overnight. But with Jack by his side, he felt a small measure of hope, a sense that no matter what happened next, he would not have to face it alone. One afternoon, Jack and Dr. Ellis sat together outside the clinic, enjoying the brief warmth of the sun. The doctor spoke quietly, describing the uncertainty he felt, the moments of fear, and the strange hope that had begun to grow alongside his worry. Jack listened, offering occasional words of reassurance, his calm presence a steady anchor in the storm of the doctor's thoughts. You know, Jack, Doctor, Ellis said finally, I thought I could face this alone. I thought I had to. But having you here, it makes a difference. I feel like I can actually think about what to do next, instead of just hiding and worrying." Jack smiled gently. "That's what friends are for, Doc. We face the hard things together, and we figure it out as we go." The doctor nodded, a small smile breaking through the tension that had shadowed his face for so long. For the first time, he felt the possibility of facing the future with someone he trusted. The growth, the fear, and the uncertainty were still there, but he no longer felt trapped by them. Over the following days, the bond between Jack and Dr. and Ellis grew stronger. The cowboy's quiet support gave the doctor strength, while the doctor's trust allowed Jack to understand the depth of the struggle he faced. And though the town continued its normal routines, inside the clinic, a slow transformation was happening. Fear was being replaced by trust, anxiety by hope, and secrecy by the first steps toward openness. For Dr. Ellis, this was more than relief. It was a turning point. He knew that soon he would have to face the town, confront the reactions of those who depended on him, and take steps to manage the growth that had changed his life. But with Jack by his side, he felt ready to meet the challenge. The road ahead would not be easy, but he no longer faced it alone. The sun rose slowly over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. The town seemed peaceful, but inside the clinic, a quiet storm was building. Dr. Ellis had reached a point he could no longer ignore. The growth he had been hiding was now impossible to conceal. It affected his daily life, his work, and his confidence. Each day brought a new challenge, and the strain was beginning to show. Jack had been by his side every step of the way. The cowboy's calm presence gave Dr. Ellis the courage to face what had terrified him for so long. But even Jack could see that the doctor was nearing his limit. The time for quiet observation had passed. Now, action was necessary. That morning, Jack arrived at the clinic earlier than usual. The wooden building looked the same from the outside, but Jack sensed the tension inside. He tied Rusty to the fence post and pushed open the door. Dr. Ellis was standing near the counter, his coat tightly buttoned, eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. When he saw Jack, he forced a small smile.
"Morning," he said softly. Jack nodded.
"Morning, Doc. You look tired. Dr. Hyde?" Ellis sighed, rubbing his temples. "I am, Jack. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. It's getting worse, and hiding it isn't helping. I think it's time the town knows." Jack frowned slightly, understanding the weight of those words. "Are you sure, Doc? It's a big step. People might react in ways we can't control." "I know," the doctor admitted, "but I can't keep pretending. I can't keep living in fear. If I want to face this, I have to be honest." Jack placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll do it together."
You won't face it alone. The day passed slowly.
Dr. Ellis moved carefully, trying to maintain his usual tasks while preparing himself for what was to come. Jack stayed close, offering quiet support. He carried supplies, assisted with patients, and provided a steady presence that allowed the doctor to focus on the challenges ahead. By late afternoon, word had reached the edge of the town. The doctor was behaving unusually. Curious townspeople began to gather near the clinic, whispers spreading quickly. They watched from a distance, unsure of what to expect. Some were worried, some were confused, but all felt the tension in the air. Inside the clinic, Dr. Ellis paced back and forth. The growth that had caused him so much fear was now undeniable. His hands shook as he prepared to face the people he had cared for all his life. Jack watched silently, knowing that this moment was the climax of weeks of struggle. Finally, Dr. Ellis took a deep breath and stepped toward the door. He opened it, stepping into the sunlight that illuminated the small crowd waiting outside. The townspeople gasped, their eyes widening as they noticed the change in the doctor. Fear, surprise, and concern mixed across their faces. Jack stepped beside him, offering a silent anchor. "It's okay, Doc," he said quietly. "We'll face them together." Dr. Ellis raised his voice, steadying himself. "People of Willow Creek," he began, "I have something important to share. For weeks, I have tried to hide a condition that has grown beyond my control. I feared what you might think, feared losing your trust, and feared facing this truth. But I can no longer hide it. I need your understanding and your patience." The crowd remained silent, unsure how to respond. Some looked shocked, others concerned, but no one spoke. Jack stayed close, giving the doctor the courage to continue. "I have always cared for this town," Dr. Ellis said, his voice trembling slightly, "and I will continue to do so. But I need your support as I face this challenge. I cannot do it alone." For a moment, the air was heavy with tension. Then, slowly, a few townspeople stepped forward. Hargrave, the elderly woman the doctor had treated, nodded gently. "We trust you, Doctor." "Ellis," she said softly, "we have always trusted you." Her words seemed to ripple through the crowd. Slowly, more people began to step forward, offering quiet words of support. "We'll help however we can," said Mr. Thompson, the shopkeeper. "You've cared for us all these years. It's our turn to care for you." The doctor's eyes filled with tears, relief washing over him. He had feared rejection, judgment, and fear, but instead he found compassion, understanding, and community. Jack's hand on his shoulder was steady, reassuring, and unshakable. Over the next few days, the town rallied around Dr. Ellis. Neighbors offered help with chores, shared advice, and provided support in practical ways. The doctor worked with Jack to manage his condition, adjusting his routines, resting when necessary, and relying on the community that had grown to respect and trust him. Though the growth remained, the burden of secrecy was lifted. Dr. Ellis could now focus on treatment and care without the constant fear of judgment. He found strength in the support of the town and in the steady presence of Jack, whose loyalty had never wavered. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Ellis and Jack sat outside the clinic. The air was warm, filled with the scent of fresh hay and earth. The doctor looked at Jack with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said quietly. Jack shrugged, smiling gently. "You didn't have to face it alone, Doc. That's what friends are for." The doctor nodded, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in weeks. The crisis was not over. The growth was still there, unpredictable and challenging, but he no longer felt trapped by fear. He had faced the town, faced the truth, and found that courage, honesty, and support could carry him through even the most difficult moments. Over the following weeks, life in Willow Creek returned to a careful rhythm. Dr. Oz, Ray. Ellis continued his work, adjusting to the new reality of his condition. The town remained supportive, and the bond between the doctor and the cowboy grew stronger each day. Together, they navigated challenges, solved problems, and faced the unpredictable nature of life in a small town with resilience and determination. Jack often thought about how courage sometimes came in quiet forms, sitting patiently, listening without judgment, or standing silently beside someone when the world seemed heavy. And Dr. Ellis learned that honesty and trust could transform fear into strength, isolation into community, and despair into hope. In the end, the crisis had brought them closer, not just as doctor and cowboy, but as friends who shared a deep understanding of life's uncertainties. The town had witnessed their courage, and in turn the doctor had learned that even in the darkest moments, support, compassion, and trust could illuminate a path forward. Willow Creek continued to thrive under the bright sun and clear skies. Children laughed and played in the streets, neighbors tended gardens, and Jack rode Rusty through the hills. But inside the clinic, a quiet strength had taken root. Dr. Ellis no longer faced life in silence, and the cowboy who had stayed by his side knew that together they could weather whatever challenges lay ahead. The town had learned an important lesson as well. Fear and misunderstanding could never overcome compassion, patience, and trust. And for Dr. Ellis and Jack, the bond they had forged in the face of uncertainty was stronger than any challenge, giving them hope for the days to come. The days after the doctor's confession were quieter than anyone expected. Willow Creek had returned to its normal rhythm, but something had changed. The town had learned to accept uncertainty and to face challenges together. And for Dr. Ellis, the relief of honesty replaced the weight of secrecy he had carried for so long. Jack stayed close, as always, helping with chores, running errands, and offering his steady presence. But now the doctor's confidence was slowly returning. Though the mysterious growth remained, it no longer dominated his life. He had faced his fear, revealed his secret, and found the support he needed from both his friend and the community. Dr. Ellis worked carefully each day. Patients continued to come to the clinic, and he treated them with the same care and attention as always. At first, some townspeople were hesitant, unsure of what to think. But Jack was often there, quietly demonstrating through his trust in the doctor that he was still capable, still strong, still the same man who had cared for them for so many years. Slowly, trust returned. Mrs. Hargrave, the elderly woman who had been one of the first to offer her support, smiled more often when she entered the clinic. She spoke to neighbors about Dr. Ellis's courage, helping others understand that the doctor's condition did not change who he was. Other townspeople followed her example, offering help where they could, bringing supplies, or simply checking in to see how he was doing. Dr. Ellis was humbled. For the first time, he realized that fear had kept him isolated, but honesty had opened the door to connection. He no longer had to hide. He no longer had to bear the burden alone, and he had Jack to thank for being there, every step of the way, patient, calm, and unwavering. One morning, Jack rode Rusty to the clinic and found Dr. Ellis outside, tending the small garden. The doctor looked up and smiled, genuine and warm. "Good morning, Jack," he said. "Morning, Doc," Jack replied. "How's the garden coming along?" "Doctor?" Ellis chuckled softly. "Better than me most days. But it's healing, just like me." Jack smiled. "That's good to hear. You've come a long way, Doc." Dr. Ellis nodded. "Doc, I have. And I couldn't have done it without you." He paused, then added quietly, "I think the town has changed too. People are kinder, more understanding. It's amazing what honesty can do." Jack looked at him thoughtfully. "It's not just honesty, Doc. It's courage, trust, and patience. You had to be brave enough to face it, and the town had to be patient enough to accept it. And we all needed to trust one another." Dr. Ellis smiled, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. The growth was still there, a reminder that life was unpredictable, but it no longer caused constant fear. The doctor now knew he could face challenges, not alone, but with support, friendship, and community. Over the following weeks, the town continued to show its strength. Neighbors worked together to maintain gardens, repair fences, and assist with daily tasks. Jack and Dr. Ellis often rode together, checking on patients, visiting homes, and ensuring that everyone in the town had what they needed. The clinic became a place not only of healing for the body, but also of trust, connection, and hope. One afternoon, as Jack helped Dr. Ellis carry supplies to a neighboring farm, the doctor paused and looked at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Jack," he said, "I've learned something important. No matter what happens, no matter how difficult life gets, having someone you trust beside you makes all the difference. I've faced my fears, and I wouldn't have survived without your support." Jack smiled, brushing the sweat from his brow. "That's what friends are for, Doc. We stand together. We help each other. That's all there is to it." Dr. Ellis nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He thought about the weeks of fear, the nights of worry, and the moments of isolation, and now he realized how far he had come. The growth was still there, but it no longer defined him. What mattered most was the bond he had with Jack, the trust of the town, and his own courage to face the truth. The town had changed too. People were more open, kinder, and willing to help one another. They had learned that understanding and compassion could overcome fear and uncertainty. The crisis that had once threatened to shake Willow Creek had instead strengthened it. One evening, as the town gathered for a small community event in the main square, Dr. Ellis and Jack stood together, watching the children play and the neighbors laugh. The sun dipped low, casting a warm golden glow over the streets. "Look at this, Jack," Dr. Ellis said quietly. "It feels peaceful, strong. Like the town has healed along with me." Jack nodded. "It has, Doc. People have learned to face challenges together, and you've shown them what courage looks like." Dr. Baba... Ellis smiled, feeling a sense of pride and relief. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led to something valuable: trust, understanding, and a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the growth would always be a part of him, but it no longer controlled his life. In the following months, Dr. Ellis continued his work at the clinic, adapting to the new routines necessary to manage his condition. Jack remained by his side, helping where needed, offering encouragement, and sharing quiet moments of camaraderie. Together they faced challenges, solved problems, and supported one another in ways that strengthened both their bond and the community around them. The town of Willow Creek thrived under the bright sun and clear skies. The children's laughter echoed across the streets. Neighbors tended gardens and farms, and the clinic became a symbol of resilience, trust, and care. Dr. Ellis and Jack had proven that even the heaviest burdens could be shared, that honesty could bring freedom, and that courage was often found in quiet, steadfast support. One morning, as Jack rode Rusty along the dusty road outside town, he thought about how far they had come. He remembered the early days when the doctor had tried to hide his secret, when fear and worry had shadowed the clinic. And now, everything had changed. The doctor was stronger, the town was more connected, and their friendship had deepened in ways neither could have imagined. Dr. Ellis joined him outside the clinic, smiling warmly. "Jack," he said, "I've learned that facing challenges with someone you trust makes all the difference. You've taught me that." Jack tipped his hat, smiling. "And you've taught me that courage isn't about fighting alone. It's about knowing when to ask for help and when to stand beside someone who needs you." The two men rode together toward the horizon, the sun casting long shadows behind them. The clinic, the town, and the people they had helped and cared for stretched out before them, Life would continue to bring challenges, but they had learned to face them with honesty, trust, and friendship. As the day faded into evening, Willow Creek felt peaceful once again. The town had endured, and its people had grown stronger. Dr. Alice and Jack had faced the unknown together, and in doing so, they had discovered the true meaning of courage, support, and community. The growth would remain a part of the doctor's life, but it no longer defined him. He had faced his fear, revealed his secret, and found understanding. Jack had stood beside him, unwavering and steady, proving that friendship and trust could overcome even the heaviest burdens. And so, life in Willow Creek continued, filled with hope, resilience, and the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, courage, honesty, and support could light the way forward. Dr. Ellis looked at the town, at the people he had served for so long, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Jack rode beside him, the quiet cowboy who had been a constant presence through it all. Together, they had faced fear, shared burdens, and emerged stronger. And together, they would continue to face whatever challenges lay ahead, with trust, friendship, and courage guiding their way.